MrBeast successfully predicted this so-called scandal, this backlash, and I want to talk about it because the story isn't that MrBeast is a Nostradamus, right? It's just based off of historical data. This was going to happen. He puts out a video where people can't hear or they see, and he's like, "Hey, I'm MrBeast. I fixed it. Boom." And well, that's largely got him a lot of praise. There have been people going, "Yeah, fuck that guy. It's just, performance activism. He's just trying to look like a good guy. This is part of the business." Also, I'm going to disregard that lots of people's lives were made better because I'm angry. Granted, it would make sense if it was at the system and the world, but I'm also going to direct it towards Jimmy, MrBeast, because fuck that.
All right, looks like we've got a bit of a cancellation on our hands. Well, let's get started. Oh no. Always open up with a bad joke. It helps relieve the tension. So, I saw this trending the other day, of course, and I decided to take a look into it. And it's obviously MrBeast built 100 wells in Africa, and so even he had the precognition to realize that this is probably going to get me canceled, but I'm going to help regardless. And now here we are again. And so what I really wanted to get into is the fact that, one, why is this even like a cancelable offense? You're building wells. Like, do you understand? And let me tell you guys something too. Even as a kid, I remember like getting clean water to communities has been an issue for like the longest time. We had so many, oh my God, there were so many fundraisers. The biggest one I remember was, I think it was called like OK Clean Water or something. That's a Canadian reference that I'm sure no one will understand. So this is an issue that's been going on for many, 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 many years. And so you have all these people who donate, like you have Red Cross, you have this and that. And the irony is that you always hear people saying, "Oh, why don't these billionaires put their money," that's, by the way, not into no one's entitled to, because they did earn it, technically speaking. But regardless, why don't these billionaires go out and try to help people with all the money they have? And so you have somebody who's helping, and they still are getting mad. You can't win with people. It doesn't make sense. It's almost like oh, guess what? I built a house. And it's like, well, the house is like not red. It's purple. It's like, don't you want a house to live in? Ugh, it's just so annoying. And the best part is that they're not even going at the core. They're not really addressing the core issue of why they don't like it. It always comes across like, oh, it looks like you're exploiting a community and this and that. And I'm just like, my question to you is, what are you doing to help your community? What are you actually doing? Are you going to soup kitchens? Are you actually like feeding homeless people? Like, what are you doing? Or are you just typing on a keyboard all day complaining? Does that make sense? It's like, there's so many ways that you can use your own time instead of demanding other people to do stuff that you can do, and just go out and then just help out. It's so simple. And you don't even have to do anything that big. You just have to help out in a way that suits you, and of course helps your community. I just stuff like this gets me so mad, because how can you take an act of charity and make it look bad and spin it to look bad? Does that make sense? That's how you know life is good right now. You're getting up on Twitter to complain about somebody who's helping. Ugh, I just don't understand it. And if you want to see what I'm referring to, here are some tweets I'm going to pull up right now, and you can decide for yourself.
But with that, as expected, he got a lot of praise for doing that, people applauding him for helping so many people using his platform and money for good. But as he predicted, he got some backlash, with some saying that he was exploiting vulnerable communities for content, or some accusing him of being a so-called white savior, and arguing he's tackily packaging a myth, mostly to children, that Africans are helpless, featureless subject of his kindness, that Africa can only be helped by a white celebrity who's amassed immense wealth first. Well, of course, online, everyone sounds off on things. We actually saw some activists agreeing with parts of the criticism, with, for example, in a CNN report, them pointing to one aspiring Kenyan politician who accused MrBeast of playing into a stereotype that Africa is dependent on handouts. Also,
now that you've seen all that, I'm going to actually talk about something that's a little bit bigger than MrBeast and all that. And you have these activists who are saying like, oh, I've been doing this for how many years, and here comes one person with all this money and this and that. But the way that I see it is that you should take somebody who comes in and do this, and this should spark some like more actual discourse about how these countries are ran, because you find that, particularly in Kenya for this one, is that there's a lot of corruption between the politicians and all that, and also there's a big wealth gap. that's not Mr. Beast's problem. This is an entirely like systemic problem that we have to approach. So maybe you should be focusing more on, of course, sustaining these wells that came in and all that. But also, why don't you just partner with people? Try to get people in on this and get more people to help out instead of like talking about, oh, I can't get the funds or I can't do this, I can't do that. And here comes this white savior coming. It's just doesn't make sense. So you have an option, okay? Sprawl or grow tall. That's literally how you have to see it. And the problem is that even if you want to criticize Mr. Beast, you're criticizing the wrong stuff. If you want to say maybe his videos are too clickbaity or the money's too much or whatever is bloated, maybe something like that. I don't know. I don't really watch Mr. Beast like that. The last video I actually watched was the Squid Game remake, so that shows you how much I watched Mr. Beast. Regardless, yeah, if you want to criticize like his actual content, go right ahead. No one's stopping you. But if you're criticizing someone for actually helping, there's a disconnect between me and you. I personally don't see it. Ugh, it's just disgusting. Like, what's wrong with giving out help? It doesn't make sense. And then also, people are taking like this act that he's doing and they're expanding it further than his scope probably could ever like, deal with, because you're going from building wells to talking about like systemic problems in these countries. You expect one person to come in and fix that? It's like, no. Even if a revolution happens tomorrow, and I mean tomorrow, it's not going to change that much, because you have to put in the systems in place in order to make sure that the economy or whatever can be sustained. And so whenever you hear people come on these platforms, they start chit-chatting and saying a whole lot of nonsense, like, yeah, just ignore it, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, here's the take that I'm going to give, okay? We should appreciate every single person who does any act of charity, performative or not. And then, regardless, if this person maybe, I don't know, switches up, or you see that as a publicity stunt or whatever, then you criticize it at the time. But don't criticize the act and just make any assumptions. This is why we wait for stuff to come out. And maybe if 2 years later, maybe Mr. Beast is the one stunting, then yeah, we can criticize him for it. But you're criticizing something that just kind of happened. That make a lot of sense? You can have your suspicions, but you should never make assumptions. Oh, gosh. Doesn't make a lot of this. It just doesn't do anything. And then, if you really want to talk about issues, go look at like the homeless crisis in somewhere like California, because that one's insane. And that crisis has only been going up. I mean, we're talking about like rent increasing, food increasing, bills going up, and it's like, wow, we're gonna go complain about somebody helping in Africa when we could be changing what's right here in our own house. Ugh. Why don't you focus on trying to pass better legislation or something in your own place instead of, I don't know, complaining? I mean, we all know why people complain. It's much easier. You can just go up, type up a storm, and then you just leave it at that. And you probably don't have to touch it ever again. But that's not what we're here for, okay? Ugh, it just annoys me. And it's not just this that people do it. It's every single like world issue that happens where people get up and they start keyboard warrioring away, and they're not really looking at what they can actually do on the micro scale. Because, believe it or not, regardless of everything, the micro scale can actually lead to stuff that's much bigger, and then you affect stuff on a macro scale. It's just basic logic. I don't even have to explain this to you, but regardless, it's just for the people who don't pay attention, this is what's annoying. And so, like, why Mr. Beast? It just doesn't make sense. Why don't you go criticize some politicians or some of these activists? I mean, wasn't there that stuff where one of the BLM founders, she like not stole the money, but she ended up having like lots of money from the donations? That's right in your own neighborhood that somebody did that. Why don't we go more after those type of people? Or sometimes you hear stories about like some pastors where they're driving these expensive vehicles and they get the donations from like the churches they run. Why don't we look at that? Don't look at somebody building wells. But no one's going to talk about it because it's not convenient. It's not trending. It's stuff that we know about, but it's not like not stuff that people really want to address. So this is why every time I will see an issue like this, or I see somebody talk about like Mr. Beast, I'm just like, okay, on to the next one. There's nothing of value coming out to your mouth. Like, there's actually zero value coming out. But of course, On platforms like Twitter, it's much easier to express these type of opinions because you're behind the safety of a screen. No one can really come at you and hold you accountable for that. You know what I mean? It's just annoying. Like, please, the love of God, why don't we take our focus and focus more on actual issues that affect us first, and then we can branch out to the greater world. Okay? Just start from there. Start small, and like I said, you go tall. Ugh, goodness. Wow. That felt like a really long rant. Goodness gracious. But, no, I'm actually done for the day. I have nothing else to really add or subtract. And of course, well, we should really start. Okay, no more well jokes. Just gotta, draw upon the. Okay, no, that's okay. We're actually done. Oh, man. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this rant, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow my socials down in the description below. Leave a dislike if you want to, and that's it for me. Why don't we go make some change one step at a time? Later.